Welcome to Emotions and Eating with Nicola Beer. Nicola controlled her feelings using food for 25 years, so she knows how draining it is to be constantly thinking about or acting out with food. Thankfully, having made an amazing breakthrough in her recovery, her mission became about helping others escape the unsatisfying cycle of frustration and self-medication with food. Nicola is determined to help you find your inner strength so you can be healthy, gain confidence, feel great, and be at peace with yourself and food.
Hi and welcome. I'm so happy you're here. I'm going to be talking to you today about food, eating and emotional foods. In a time where food and fad diets and mental health are such hot topics, it is so important to acknowledge the food that we consume does indeed play a vital role in our lives, both physically and mentally. We often eat habitually without giving any thought as to why we eat particular foods and why there are some foods that we should exclude from our diets. Majority of blind eating comes from leading stressful, fast-paced lives and living in a generation where we are not checking the sources of where our food is coming from. This factor itself, along with the rise in illnesses across the world, highlights the major problem of stress or comfort eating the wrong foods laced with chemicals. We are eating foods that contain minimal or zero amounts of nutrients our bodies desperately need to function effectively. By eating foods that our mind, body and soul do not recognise as food or do not get nourishment from, puts us in a state of unease and starvation. This is our body's way of communicating with us that something is not okay. It is this innate voice that keeps us connected to our inner souls. And when we choose to listen, we are able to slow down and pay extra attention to the nutrient-rich foods we need to consume and the emotions we need to address. There are many ways our body communicates with us, whether it's through cravings, addictions, allergies, and more. So in this episode, I will explain how to listen to your inner soul and interpret what your body is trying to communicate with you and why emotionally. So why does the body need to communicate through cravings or addictions? When we are too busy to listen to our bodies, we forget that without our mind being fed the right foods, we are depriving our brain from efficiently processing different emotions. Our nervous system relies on our brain to send important memos around the body to help us remain calm, feel good about ourselves, and react appropriately to difficult situations. The more nutrient deficient food we eat, the more our bodies will struggle to cope with the day-to-day emotions and stresses. People often think that they need to diet in order to combat the unhealthy addictions they gain through stressful times. However, we need to teach ourselves to listen to our body's need rather than just assume what is needed. Else Reach 2017 discussed the intuitive eating approach, and many things have been written on that, and I will be covering that coming up, and it's definitely something that I cover with the women or the men that I work with in losing weight or changing their eating habits, loving themselves and becoming free of the diets, starvation and binge cycle. Intuitive eating is really great because it encourages you to listen to the deep inner messages of your body in order to effectively connect to what to consume and what your body needs. This approach moves away from the good or bad stigmas attached to food and focuses more on eating what your body is telling you need without feeling guilty. Through intuitive eating, you are able to remove the negative feelings associated with certain foods, and you're able to deal with emotions in other ways. Our brains are such complex organs that it is only right we pay extra attention to its functions, specifically the neocortex, which is part of the brain that controls how we perceive our future and the way we connect with our inner souls. If we do not feed our neocortex the right foods, our bodies end up turning to the more primitive parts of our brains, the reptilian and the limbic brains. The reptilian brain main focus is on survival, controlling our ability to breathe, our heart rate, and our fight or flight response. It is devoid of emotion It is very egocentric and holds us to old memories linked to safety or survival in order to protect us. The limbic brain is the emotional side, analysing what goes on around us and how it makes us feel. The functions of the limbic brain are heightened when we overindulge in processed food and sugars, including an increase in obsessions with food, drugs, sex, and more. The neocortex part of the brain does not function well under stress, and this is where the limbic brain takes over, which basically means emotions are heightened and responses to situations are emotional rather than rational. Thus, desire to seek pleasure or comfort in food arises. So this is really the main point to take away. And if me talking about those different parts of the brain was going over your head, it's too early or in the morning for you, or too late at night, or you've got so many other things going on, essentially, really what I'm saying is that sometimes our emotional brain takes over and wants to be fed foods for emotional reasons than physical reasons. And I'm sure probably you can identify with that. Most people can. And if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably likely to apply to you that you've eaten things not because you're hungry, but because you're trying to either distract yourself emotionally or you're trying to fill that emotional need through food. And that's where it becomes really interesting. So I'm glad you've stayed through that with me, because now we're going to be talking about the different foods that we go to and what they can signal that is going on for us emotionally. Now, obviously, this is a generalization, and I'm not talking about having little bits of these foods. I'm talking about having excessive amounts of these foods, excessive cravings, excessive addictions. It's often a sign that something emotionally is happening to us. You see, the majority of people use food to make themselves feel better, and while there might be an instant feelings of comfort when you eat certain foods, we have to remind ourselves that the feelings deep inside are still there, waiting to be addressed. Food cannot fill those emotional voids, so the void of loneliness or emptiness, using food to really fill yourself up. If you eat lots of stodgy, bulky food, this is often wanting to fill that gap, that void, and not feeling seen. And I'm going to go through here some more foods that we tend to crave to when we're experiencing different emotions. And just listen with a pinch of salt. See how it goes for you. See if you can relate to this. So, crunchy foods. Crunchy foods are often linked to anger. Overeating on crunchy foods such as crisps, nachos, crunchy cereals often indicates frustration, resentment, anger. Turning to crunchy foods can be an outlet for anger, allowing us to express anger without having to face a situation or person that is making us feel angry. It may seem safer than confronting someone or serve as a way to distract you from punishing yourself if you're angry at yourself. But of course, overeating to deal with anger is not safe for your body, as it can lead to excess weight and you'll still be carrying the anger. You wouldn't have let go of the anger. It's just that distraction. So that's something to bear in mind if you love crunchy foods. Are you angry? And who are you angry at? And then work on that. The next is salty foods. So salty foods often indicate fear. Indicate we're feeling fearful, worried, concerned. Salty foods could be the salty dressings, salty meat, salty cheese. And it can be a sign of not being able to cope with worries on your mind. So seeking that food and also being scared to take a risk. And then there's stodgy food, so high gluten food, wheat products. These indicate the need for comfort and safety. There are many foods that we class as comfort food when it comes to high carb, high volume food. This could be things like creamy mashed potato, a big bowl of pasta, lots of slices of toast, cinnamon buns. These foods give us a warm feeling of security and a sense of comfort, often making them very addictive and needing more and more and more to get that comfort. And as you know, remember, I was making these so-called healthy cakes. They didn't have any sugar in, but they were just wheat, and I could be eating half a loaf of bread in one sitting if I started on it. So sometimes we're just needing that comfort of like stodgy foods, needing that safety. Then there's sugary foods. So overindulging in sugary foods is linked to two things. It's linked to the need for romantic love or excitement. So sugary foods like donuts, cakes and chocolate provide that buzz of love that we need in life. And there is something exciting about the high that you get when you consume a large amount of sugar. And so sometimes it's people seeking love. They could just go for sugary things. Fizzy drinks are also an indicator of a lack of excitement, a lack of passion, a lack of thrill, and people needing to have a soda to fizz up their life and make things more exciting. So are you addicted to fizzy drinks or sugary foods? And then there is dairy, so milk, ice cream, creamy cheese, and this is generally seen as nurturing love. And when you think back to the first food you ever experienced as a baby was your mother's milk, which was creamy. So creamy and dairy milks and dairy products often feel that nurturing love. They're often connected to that nurturing love that we're missing. And maybe we miss being cared for, shown affection to, shown attention to. And when we're going for an excessive amount or addicted to creamy cheeses and creamy things, then it can often be that yearning. Yogurts as well, that yearning for that nurturing love, being held, being cared for, being protected and seen. And then there is chocolate. So chocolate has been linked to sexual drive. And as humans, we are sexual beings, and feeling sensual is something that we crave. And if we're lacking romance in our lives or lacking that intimate experience, we can often turn to chocolate to replace the intimacy that we need to function as healthy beings, or the sugary and creamy dairy products also. We can turn to those. So is there something missing in one of your relationships at the moment? Do you feel that you're not loved, protected, comfortable or safe? And is this affecting your eating? And then there is alcohol. So alcohol has been linked to that need of acceptance. One of the things we innately turn to when we need a boost of confidence in social situations is often alcohol for a lot of the Western world. And we hope that drinking will allow us to loosen up and become accepted part of our social circle. And for some people, it also gives that illusion of self-acceptance, where people drink it and think like, okay, when I drink it, I'm fine with myself. I stop nagging myself. I stop that self-criticism. I stop that voice. I'm happy. And then the voice gets louder though when the person sobers up the next day, because they're then annoyed on top of that about the drinking as well. So if you're going for alcohol, do you accept your life? Do you accept yourself? Do you crave to be accepted by others and not have that confidence within you? Alcohol also gives that sugar rush, that sugar excitement and love. People feel like they're giving themselves a treat having wine or beer. They feel like it's loving themselves, and this then becomes quite addictive. Drinking alcohol also can hide those feelings of disappointment, which can make people feel good about themselves. Unfortunately, it's only short-lived, and I've helped many individuals to break free from that glass of wine and snacks cycle, or that glass of wine and leads to a few glasses of wine, leads maybe to a binge, and then the next day a bit hungover leads to a bigger binge. People trapped in that cycle. It can be really beneficial just to get some help to get out of it, because once you get out of it, often you can keep it up, but it's just sometimes it can be so difficult to get out of it. I know, because I was in that awful cycle for such a long time. Then there's corn, and according to different experts, this is not my experience working with people, however, apparently corn can be linked to success, and people eating corn may feel feelings of failure, feeling a lack of success, so they go for corn products if they're dealing with professional, financial or personal disappointment. And it can distract someone, it can fill them up, and it can take away those feelings of I'm not feeling successful. I haven't really found that myself. I'd be interested to know what you think, what your feelings are around all of these. Please do feel free to email me. I'd love to hear from you. And you can also leave a rating or review, share